Hey guys, tonight we step back into the warm, dusty air of West Africa. The sun is low, casting long shadows over a kingdom you've probably never heard much about. Mali. Picture it, the red earth crunching under your feet, the smell of roasted grains wafting from cooking fires, and the quiet hum of life in a bustling royal court. You wander past rows of clay huts, past traders haggling over cloth and spices, and you pause in a crowded courtyard where a boy named Musa, no different from the others, watches the world go by. His gaze is steady, his face calm, but you can't help but wonder, could this boy really be the one who would someday command so much gold that entire economies trembled? Of course, you probably wouldn't survive long in this world. The sun scorches the rivers, flood unpredictably, and the Sahel is an unforgiving place. Crocodiles lurk in the shallows, bandits in the bush, and disease strikes without warning. But still, life here flows rich in trade, in culture, in resilience. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this little corner of sleepy history reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The boy Musa is born around 1280, the exact year lost in the mists of time. But the world he enters is vibrant. You feel the buzz of the royal court in Niani, the capital of Mali, a place bustling with traders from the Sahara Berbers, leading their camels in tight lines, and griots, the storytellers weaving songs of ancestors. The scent of smoked fish and millet porridge clings to the air while children play in the dust, their laughter mingling with the chants of prayer and the distant clang of blacksmiths. Musa grows up in the shadow of a lineage that traces its roots to Sundiata Keita, the legendary founder of the Mali Empire. You can almost hear the griots recounting how Sundiata, once a crippled boy, rose to defeat his enemies and unite the Mande people under a single banner. It's a story Musa would have heard countless times, maybe under the flickering light of an oil lamp as night winds stirred through the thatch of his family's compound. Yet Musa's early years are not all golden dreams. Life in Mali is demanding even for a prince. You trudge through fields where farmers wrestle with the fickle rains, their hands thick with mud, hoping the millet will grow tall this year. You follow traders along the dusty routes toward the salt mines of Tagaza, where the air is so dry it cracks your skin and the salt slabs shimmer like glass under the unforgiving sun. Musa watches, learns, and listens. He sees how power flows not just from warriors and kings, but from those who can command resources, salt gold slaves, and knowledge. He hears whispers of the distant lands beyond the desert, the glories of Cairo, the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, the endless blue of the Mediterranean. And maybe a seed of ambition begins to stir within him. Historians still debate how much young Musa understood about his future. Was he a quiet observer, absorbing every detail like a sponge? Or was he already dreaming of a Mali that would stretch its influence across continents? What is certain is that as you stroll the palace grounds beside him, it's clear Musa is no ordinary boy. He's watching the world with a mind that sees patterns others miss, a mind already beginning to grasp that gold trade and diplomacy can shape empires just as surely as spears and swords. And so, as the sun sets over the savannah and the fires crackle in the courtyards, you see Musa, A boy who will one day make the world sit up and take notice, sitting quietly by a fire, listening to stories of kings dreaming of something bigger. You wake with the sounds of a bustling marketplace swirling around you. The smell of roasting meat mingles with the scent of freshly tanned leather. The air is thick with dust, kicked up by the steady procession of traders, their donkeys and camels groaning under the weight of salt blocks, cloth bundles, and spices. This is Mali's heartbeat, its markets, and you can feel it pulsing all around you. As you wander through the throng, you glimpse Musa again. He's older now, maybe in his late teens, standing just outside the market's edge, his eyes scanning the endless stream of goods and people. The boy from the palace has grown into a young man with a quiet intensity in his gaze, watching how wealth flows like the Niger River, carving paths that shape cities, families, and kingdoms alike. The Mali Empire is no small kingdom anymore. It sprawls across the Sahel, stretching from the gold mines in the south to the salt mines in the north. The air hums with the clinking of gold dust being weighed on scales. Merchants haggle in languages you can't understand, Manding, Berber, Songhai, even a bit of Arabic mixed in. Gold is everywhere, embedded in jewelry, sewn into tunics, even sprinkled on the floor of the king's audience hall. It's almost as if gold is the air Mali breathes. You overhear a trader muttering under his breath, "Mali is a land paved with gold." It's a slight exaggeration, sure, but not by much. The gold mines of Bambouk and Bure are the empire's treasure troves, and Musa knows it. As he walks through the market, his fingers absently tracing a small nugget of gold in his palm. You can't help but wonder, did he already imagine the grand destiny that awaited him? Or was he simply caught in the current of something much larger than himself? Historians still argue whether the Mali Empire's rise was purely from its wealth, or if it was Musa's foresight that turned a kingdom into a global legend. Some say it was the trade routes, those long arteries of commerce snaking across the Sahara, that pumped life into Mali's heart. Others whisper that it was the quiet but unrelenting ambition of its rulers that truly built the empire's foundations. Perhaps it was a bit of both. You pause by a stall where a griot, his voice rough from years of singing, is performing a tale of Sundiata. The old king's story is legend passed down through generations. But now you hear a twist, whispers of Musa entering the tale. The griot's voice drops, and he sings of a prince who walks the earth as if he were born from gold itself. It's a subtle addition, almost an afterthought, but you feel it, a shift in the story, a sign that Musa's legend is already beginning to grow. As you follow Musa through the market, a sharp scent catches your nose salt. Blocks of it stacked like stone walls glisten in the sun. A merchant waves at Musa, offering him a taste. You lick the salt off your fingers, the taste sharp and dry on your tongue, and you realize how vital this commodity is. Gold may glitter, but salt preserves life. In Mali, they say gold is wealth, but salt is survival. Musa, standing tall among the traders, seems to understand this. His gaze lingers on the salt slabs, the camels, the rows of goods from across the desert. You sense that he's absorbing it all quietly, weaving threads of trade wealth and power in his mind. And then, almost as quickly as it began, the market winds down. The sun dips lower, casting the world in a soft golden glow. Traders pack up their goods. Camels grumble as they kneel for the night, and the air is filled with the clatter of closing stalls. You take one last look at the young Musa standing there with the gold nugget still in his hand. The air seems to shimmer around him as if the golden dust of Mali's future is already swirling at his feet. You know, though, he does not yet, that this quiet observer will soon shape an empire. The sun rises hot and unyielding over the savannah, casting a blinding glare on the flat-topped acacia trees and the red dusty earth. You feel it on your skin, this heavy, relentless heat that seems to press down with the weight of responsibility itself. And there in the heart of the royal court, you see Musa standing taller now, his shoulders set, his eyes steady. Something has changed. The whispers begin to spread through the courtyards like smoke from a cooking fire. King Abu Bakr X has vanished. You catch fragments of stories as you drift past clusters of servants and traders. They say the king sailed west across the great ocean, seeking the edges of the world, leaving behind a kingdom and a gaping hole in its leadership. Some shake their heads in disbelief, others in admiration. A few mutter darkly, suggesting the voyage was madness, a waste of men and gold. Historians still debate whether Abu Bakr's expedition even existed, let alone succeeded. Was it a bold quest for knowledge or a reckless gamble that left Mali vulnerable? What's certain is this Musa is now king. You watch as he ascends the throne, a young man in his early 30s, barely settled into the trappings of power. The golden staff of authority feels heavy in his hands, the weight of Mali's fate settling onto his shoulders like the sun on your back. His heart must be racing, though his face shows only the calm, composed expression of a man prepared for destiny. The court is a blur of color and sound. Robes of indigo and crimson swirl as advisors bow low. The griots raise their voices in song, praising Musa's lineage and Mali's greatness. Drums beat in the distance, a steady pulsing rhythm that seems to echo the heartbeat of an entire empire. You stand by the doorway, watching it all unfold. The traders from the north, the warriors in their leather and iron, the scribes with their ink-stained fingers, all eyes turn to Musa. Some gaze at him with hope, others with calculation. Will this new king maintain Mali's golden luster? Will he hold the trade routes, protect the caravans, and keep the kingdom's borders safe from Songhai raiders and desert bandits? Musa, for his part, seems to grasp the challenge. His first acts as king are cautious, securing alliances, rewarding loyalty, and keeping a firm grip on the gold and salt trade. He knows that Mali's wealth lies not just in its mines, but in its control of the Saharan trade routes. You can almost hear the calculations running through his mind. How many camels to send to Tagaza? How much gold to weigh out for the scholars in Timbuktu? How many warriors to post along the Niger's banks? And yet, there is an air of quiet ambition about him, a sense that this king is not content to merely maintain. Musa's gaze drifts toward the horizon, toward lands he has never seen. You wonder, does he dream of far-off cities where the call to prayer echoes from marble minarets? Does he picture himself standing among scholars and merchants, his robes glittering with gold, his name spoken in awe across the world? But as the sun begins to dip once more, you can't shake the feeling that Musa's story is just beginning. He stands at the threshold of something vast, something that will ripple far beyond Mali's borders. And in the quiet of the evening, you hear the soft clink of gold coins being counted, the shuffle of parchment maps unrolling, and the quiet resolve of a king who knows the weight of his crown and intends to carry it with both caution and ambition. The air hums with a low, expectant energy. It's as if the very ground beneath your feet trembles faintly with the weight of gold, buried deep in the earth. You follow Musa through the palace corridors, his stride measured, his gaze distant, as if he's already looking beyond these walls, beyond the bustling courtyards and the endless fields. And maybe he is, because here in this quiet moment something is shifting. Word has begun to trickle in from distant lands, traders returning from Cairo and Mecca, their stories glittering as much as the gold they carry. Whispers drift through the market stalls and the palace kitchens. Musa, they say, isn't just a king. He's the richest man alive. You pause in the shade of a baobab tree listening as two merchants argue in low voices. He's so wealthy he could build a palace entirely of gold bricks. Nonsense. He could line the Niger itself with gold dust and still have plenty left over. Hyperbole, sure, but as you walk beside Musa, you can't deny the staggering reality of Mali's wealth. The empire's mines in Bambouk and Borer produce so much gold that for a time, West Africa is known as the land of gold. Gold dust is not a rare sight here. It clings to traders' robes, it sparkles in the cracks of clay pots, it's measured in gourds and sacks rather than coins. You almost feel it in the air, a faint shimmer that makes you squint against the sun. Historians still debate whether Musa was truly the wealthiest person in history adjusting for modern economics. Some argue it's impossible to compare given how different wealth was then. But step into Musa's audience hall and you might just believe the legends. The walls glow in the firelight, adorned with gold inlays and fine carvings. The floor is swept daily, yet still flecks of gold dust glitter in the cracks. And it's not just the trappings of wealth, it's how Musa uses it. You see him in council listening as emissaries report on trade routes, stretching like veins across the Sahara, the Niger River gleaming in the sun, and caravans stacked high with salt cloth and books. Gold flows from his hands like water, but always with purpose. He funds scholars to copy manuscripts, gifts traders to secure loyalty, and rewards soldiers to keep the peace. You watch as a scribe approaches Musa, bowing low, and presents a scroll. The king's fingers, long and graceful, unroll it carefully. It's a letter from a merchant in Cairo, an invitation, a plea, and a challenge all rolled into one. They've heard of Musa's wealth, they say. They've heard of the African king who rains gold like the monsoons. And they wonder, is it true? Musa's lips quirk slightly, the barest hint of a smile playing across his face. You can almost hear his thoughts. They'll know soon enough. You trail him into the garden where the scent of flowering baobab and the rustle of palm leaves wrap around you like a soft blanket. Musa moves with the quiet confidence of a man who knows the world will soon speak his name. The stars begin to shimmer in the darkening sky, and you catch your breath as the horizon seems to stretch endlessly. Musa stands still, his eyes fixed far away. He's thinking perhaps of Cairo, of Mecca, of cities whose names taste foreign on the tongue. Places where gold isn't just a currency, but a symbol of power, faith, and destiny. And here in the quiet garden beneath the stars, you realize something else. For Musa, gold isn't just about wealth, it's about legacy, about building something that will outlast the dust of time. You feel a shiver even in the warm night air. This is more than a king hoarding riches. This is the making of a legend. The air is thick with dust, the kind that clings to your skin and seeps into your nose, leaving a faint taste of earth and heat on your tongue. You stand among a crowd of thousands, merchants, scribes, warriors, servants, even a few musicians, and the energy is electric. The sun beats down relentlessly, shimmering off the backs of camels, the brass of instruments, and the golden threads woven into rich fabrics. Musa is at the center of it all, dressed in flowing robes of deep indigo, the color shimmering in the sun, edged with delicate gold embroidery. His turban is wound high, a golden clasp at its peak, and around his neck heavy chains of gold glint as he moves. You feel a slight breeze, but it does nothing to ease the heat rising from the desert floor, the heat of thousands of bodies gathering for something monumental. Musa is leaving. The pilgrimage to Mecca has begun. The sheer scale of it boggles the mind. You count camels 1, 2, 20, 100 and then give up. The animals stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with heavy packs of gold bars, sacks of dusted gold bolts of fine cloth, and leather satchels of supplies. Servants bustle about, adjusting saddle straps, checking lists, offering water. Scholars say Musa's caravan numbered in the tens of thousands, perhaps 60,000 people in total. It's not just a royal entourage, it's a traveling city. You see cooks hauling massive pots, artisans with bundles of tools, griots ready to sing the king's praises at each stop, even entire orchestras preparing to perform under the stars. Historians still debate the exact size of the caravan. Was it truly 60,000 tals? Did Musa lead 12,000 slaves, each carrying 4 pounds of gold dust, as some sources claim? Or are these tales the embellishments of travelers wide-eyed at the sight of an African king so rich he seemed almost mythical? Yet as you stand there, the air humming with the low bleating of camels and the shouts of caravan leaders, it feels real enough. Musa surveys the gathering from atop a richly decorated camel, its saddle covered in fine leather, its reins studded with gold. His gaze sweeps over the scene not with arrogance, but with the quiet calculation of a man who understands the power of a spectacle. You hear whispers among the onlookers. Why such a grand pilgrimage? Some say it's devotion. Musa is a devout Muslim after all, and fulfilling the Hajj is a sacred duty. Others hint at strategy. After all, a king who displays this level of wealth across the Islamic world can secure trade alliances and prestige. Perhaps it's both a blending of faith and ambition, of genuine belief and shrewd diplomacy. The first camels begin to move, bells clinking softly. The caravan stretches into the horizon, shimmering under the desert sun like a golden river winding across the sand. You find yourself swept up in the movement, the low hum of voices rising in prayer, the faint strains of music as the griots begin to sing of Musa's greatness. It's almost overwhelming, the dust, the heat, the sheer scale of it. You imagine how the traders in distant lands will react when they see this procession arriving, a king so wealthy that he doesn't simply travel. He moves with an entire world in tow. As night falls, you lie under the stars, the sky so wide it feels like it could swallow you whole. The fires crackle softly, and somewhere nearby the griots' voices carry in the breeze. They sing of gold, of a king blessed by Allah, of a journey that will echo across the sands for generations. And as you drift off, you realize you're part of something bigger than a single man's pilgrimage. You're witnessing the birth of a legend. Morning creeps over the horizon in soft streaks of pink and gold, but the desert has been awake for hours. The sound of camel hooves on packed earth blends with the soft clinking of gold-laden saddlebags. You rise, brushing the fine grit of Saharan dust from your clothes, and glance around at the caravan slowly coming to life. Fires crackle, kettles bubble, and the smell of cardamom and roasted grain drifts through the air. Musa moves among his people, not as a distant figure on a golden throne, but as a leader at the heart of his traveling kingdom. His robe glimmers faintly in the early light, and his voice is quiet but firm as he gives instructions to the caravan leaders. You notice the way people defer to him not just because he's their king, but because his vision holds them together. The air grows hotter as the sun climbs. You wipe sweat from your brow and squint at the endless line of camels and travelers. There are moments when the desert feels like it stretches forever, a golden sea swallowing the horizon. In a brief pause, you sit on a warm stone, letting the hum of the caravan wash over you. A griot strums a soft tune on a stringed instrument, singing of Musa's ancestors, heroes, and kings who carved empires from the sands. His fingers pluck the strings lazily, as if the story he tells is as natural as breathing. A merchant nearby leans in, whispering, "Did you know Musa even brought architects with him? They say he plans to build mosques along the way wherever he stops." You raise an eyebrow, the thought of a mobile building crew following a caravan almost comical, but also fitting. Musa, it seems, doesn't just travel for worship. He builds, he plans, he seeds the future with every step. And as the sun sets, the caravan settles in for the night, fires flickering across the sands like tiny stars. You lie back gazing up at the real stars, clear, bright, infinite, and realize that you're part of something almost mythical. This isn't just a journey to Mecca. It's a display of power, of wealth, of vision. It's a story that will be told in marketplaces and palaces alike, a story of a king so rich, he makes gold flow like water. And you're right in the middle of it, watching the legend of Mansa Musa unfold step by golden step. You awaken to the sound of murmured prayers, drifting across the desert, carried on a warm, dusty breeze. The first rays of sunlight paint the dunes in soft gold, and the caravan stirs once more, preparing to continue its long, relentless march. You stretch, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and gaze out over the shimmering sea of camels, pack animals, and people stretching so far into the horizon, it seems endless. But today, there's a different kind of energy in the air, an undercurrent of excitement mixed with awe. You overhear whispers as you pass small clusters of travelers. Cairo, the city of wonders, is near. You've heard the stories, of course, tales of a city so grand, it makes even the wealth of Mali seem modest. The call to prayer from the grand minarets, the scent of exotic spices in the air, the markets filled with silks and jewels. But as you walk alongside Musa, watching his eyes narrow with focus, you realize that this is not just a visit. This is a moment. Musa knows it too. His caravan arrives in Cairo, not quietly, not modestly, but with a display of wealth so dazzling it seems almost unbelievable. Gold flows like a river. He gives gifts to the sultans, to merchants, to the poor. He hands out so much gold that the markets in Cairo, this mighty city of the Islamic world, begin to tremble under the weight. Historians still argue about the details. Did Musa's generosity really cause Cairo's economy to falter for over a decade? Did the price of gold plummet because of this single man's lavish handouts? Or are the stories exaggerated tales, spun by traders wide-eyed at the sight of an African king whose gold seemed inexhaustible? But standing here watching gold dust trickle through the fingers of beggars and nobles alike, you can't help but believe it. The scene is almost surreal. You watch as a man kneels before Musa, bowing so low his forehead presses to the ground, and Musa, smiling gently, places a pouch of gold in the man's hands. A merchant's wife, her eyes wide as dinner plates, gasps as her husband receives a bundle of cloth embroidered with golden threads. Even the camels look regal, their saddles encrusted with gold and silver, their reins wrapped in fine leather. The markets buzz with excitement. You hear traders murmuring in awe, calculating what this sudden flood of gold will mean for their fortunes. One man rubs his hands together gleefully. Another frowns in worry, whispering, "Too much gold." This cannot be good for the prices. And through it all, Musa moves with a calm, deliberate grace. It's not arrogance, he doesn't strut or shout, but there's no denying the quiet power he exudes. He seems to know exactly what he's doing, making a statement not just of faith, but of Mali's place in the world. Later, as you wander the quieter streets of Cairo, the scent of cardamom and roasted meats still lingering in the air, you catch snippets of conversation. The African king, the one with the gold. Did you see his caravan? It's clear that Musa's name is being etched into memory here as surely as it will be in the dusty pages of history books. You pause beside a stall selling dates and figs, the sweetness filling your mouth as you listen to a scholar argue with a merchant. His wealth is beyond counting, the merchant insists, gesturing wildly. Perhaps the scholar says softly, stroking his beard, "But gold cannot buy everything." You can't help but smile at that. True enough, yet, in this moment, it seems like Musa's gold can buy almost anything. As night falls, you sit by a small fire watching the flickering light dance across the faces of those around you. The desert air is warm, the sounds of Cairo still faintly humming in the distance, and you think to yourself, this is what it feels like when history is being made. And somewhere nearby, Musa himself gazes up at the stars, perhaps wondering how far his gold, his vision, and his name will travel long after he's gone. The hum of Cairo lingers in your ears like the soft ringing of a bell that refuses to fade. You walk beside the caravan again, the air now heavy with the scent of spices, fresh bread, and the faint tang of sweat from the countless travelers pressing forward. The Nile glimmers in the distance, a silver ribbon snaking through the landscape while the call to prayer echoes faintly across the rooftops. Musa's name is on everyone's lips. You hear it in the marketplaces where traders gather under faded awnings, in the shaded courtyards where scholars sip mint tea, and in the bustling alleys where beggars whisper their hopes. They talk of the African king who arrived with a caravan so vast it seemed to blot out the sun, who gave gold so freely it rained from his hands, who made Cairo's economy wobble on its very foundations. And yet, as you watch Musa, you see no trace of arrogance. He moves through the crowds with a quiet dignity, a man who understands both the weight of wealth and the fleeting nature of fame. His face is calm, but his eyes sparkle with a shrewd calculation. You can almost hear the thoughts turning over in his mind. What will they remember? What story will they tell? Historians still puzzle over the impact of Musa's visit to Cairo. Some argue it was a turning point, a moment when the world's gaze shifted just briefly toward West Africa and its hidden riches. Others suggest it was just a spectacle, a golden flash in the pan, impressive but ultimately fleeting, and yet the echoes of that visit linger, carried on, the trade winds woven into the fabric of stories told from Cairo to Constantinople, from the courts of Europe to the mosques of Arabia. You hear a scholar muttering to himself as he copies a map tracing Musa's route with careful ink strokes. "The king of Mali," he says softly, "so wealthy, he broke Cairo." You smile, imagining that phrase carved into the dusty corners of history books yet to be written. As the caravan prepares to depart, you pause in the shadow of a mosque, its minaret rising high against the bright sky. A group of students debates heatedly nearby, their voices, a soft murmur of Arabic phrases and half-formed arguments. Did he really give away all that gold, one asks wide-eyed. Surely not all of it, another replies. Maybe it's just a story, a legend growing in the telling. But you know better. You were there when Musa handed out those heavy pouches, when merchants gasped at the weight of the coins, when the beggars wept with joy. The caravan moves again, the camels groaning under their loads, the travelers murmuring prayers as they set off on the next leg of the journey. The desert stretches ahead, vast and unyielding, but the air crackles with a sense of purpose. Musa's legend grows with every step, every gold coin exchanged, every whispered tale carried by the wind. And as you fall into step beside the caravan, the faint scent of dust and sweat filling your nose, you can't help but wonder, when future generations speak of this journey, will they remember the gold, the grandeur, the sheer spectacle of it all? Or the quiet determination of a king who knew exactly what he was doing? The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the sands, and the caravan rolls on an endless line of camels. Servants, scholars, and warriors, all following the golden thread of Musa's ambition. And you're just a speck in this great tapestry. But tonight, as the stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, you feel the weight of history settling around you like a warm, heavy cloak. The desert stretches on in every direction, an endless expanse of shimmering heat, cracked earth, and distant mirages that flicker like half-remembered dreams. Yet as the days pass, the air around you changes. The heat softens as the caravan reaches the edges of Mali's golden vision, where the desert yields to the lush banks of the Niger River, and the air smells of mud water and the faint tang of ink. You arrive in Timbuktu. It's not the city of towering marble and spires that travelers might expect. No, Timbuktu is a patchwork of mud brick buildings, thatched roofs, and bustling markets. But there's a hum in the air, a sense of quiet industry that pulses beneath the surface. You feel it as you wander the streets, the low murmur of scholars debating under the shade of acacia trees, the gentle scratch of reed pens on parchment, the scent of ink mingling with the aroma of roasting millet. Musa walks these streets not as a conqueror, but as a builder. His eyes sweep over the modest mosques, the crowded markets, the stacks of books for sale under simple awnings. Here in this dusty city on the edge of the desert, he sees something more: the potential for a golden age of learning. You trail behind him as he pauses by a scholar bent over a manuscript, the man's fingers stained with ink, his expression furrowed in concentration. Musa leans in, asking a question softly, and the scholar looks up, surprised. A moment passes, and then they begin to talk about faith, trade, astronomy, the secrets hidden in the curling lines of Arabic script. Historians still argue whether Musa's passion for learning was a personal obsession or a clever political move. Did he truly love the pursuit of knowledge, or did he see it as another kind of wealth, a resource that could elevate Mali's status as surely as gold? Whatever the truth, you can see the spark in his eyes as he listens to the scholar's quiet explanations. And then, with the sweep of a hand, Musa commissions more books to be copied, more scholars to be hired, more manuscripts to be brought in from across the Islamic world. He sends word for architects men who know how to build not just walls, but institutions that will last. You stroll past the marketplace where traders haggle over salt blocks and woven mats, and you overhear a merchant whispering, "Did you hear the king is bringing books, hundreds of them?" His eyes widen in disbelief. Books more valuable than gold. You smile, imagining the ripple of that statement across the region. A king who sees knowledge as treasure, that's not a tale you hear every day. The city of Timbuktu begins to hum with new energy. Mud brick libraries rise from the dust, their walls warm beneath your fingertips, the scent of fresh plaster mixing with the desert air. You hear children laughing as they carry slates, elders nodding as they discuss theology, traders pausing to listen to scholars debate the nature of the stars. And in the midst of it all stands Musa watching quietly, his arms folded across his chest, his face half shadowed by his turban. You wonder if he realizes that he's laying the foundation for a legacy that will stretch far beyond gold, that the knowledge preserved in these humble buildings will echo across centuries. As the sun sets over Timbuktu, painting the mud walls in a soft golden glow, you hear the griots tuning their instruments. They begin to sing not just of Musa's gold, but of his vision. Of a king who understood that true wealth isn't just in riches, but in the minds of those who carry knowledge forward, like a flame passed from one generation to the next. And you sit quietly, letting the melody drift over you, the soft strum of stringed instruments weaving into the desert wind. The stars blink awake one by one, and you feel it, the weight of history, the fragile glow of learning, and the quiet pride of a king who knew his empire could be more than just gold. You wake to the sound of hammers tapping, of voices calling instructions, of the soft slap of wet mud against wooden frames. The air smells earthy, damp, and full of possibility. The early morning light glints off scaffolding woven from palm fronds and ropes. You stand at the edge of a construction site, the air thick with the scent of wet clay and straw. This is the great mosque of Jenne, a vision born from the mind of Mansa Musa, rising slowly from the earth like a giant termite mound carved by human hands. You watch workers barefoot in the mud, their bodies slick with sweat shaping bricks by hand, each one molded from river clay and sun-dried beneath the relentless Sahel sun. Musa stands nearby, robes dusted with flecks of mud, nodding as architects and masons confer. There's no marble here, no towering spires like in distant cities of stone. Instead, it's a testament to resilience, mud walls, reinforced with beams of timber, organic, almost alive. The mosque breathes with the heat of the day, the cooling of the night, the rhythm of the seasons. You run your hand over the rough surface of the wall, feeling the sun-baked ridges beneath your fingertips. It's hard to imagine such humble materials forming something so grand, yet here it stands growing taller with each passing day. Historians still argue how much of Jenne's original design was Musa's vision. Some say he simply sponsored it, others argue he laid out the plans himself. The truth, like much in history, is probably somewhere in between. What's certain is this: without Musa's wealth, ambition, and commitment to Mali's spiritual life, this mosque, this marvel might never have risen from the mud at all. You pause as a griot nearby sings softly of the mosque's birth. They shaped the earth, they called to God, they built with hands and prayers alike. And as you watch, you notice something unexpected. Musa himself lifts a brick and helps set it into the wall. His hands press into the wet clay, and for a moment the king and the laborer are one. You feel the air shift, a quiet understanding that this is more than construction. It's a statement of faith, a symbol of unity, a structure meant to outlast the gold and the trade routes. You hear whispers among the workers, some skeptical, others hopeful. Will it stand when the rains come? Is this truly the will of Allah? Will our children pray here long after we are gone? A thin layer of dust coats everything, softening the edges of the scene. You watch as the mosque takes shape slowly, day by day, brick by brick. Musa oversees it all, offering quiet instructions, nodding at progress, sometimes pausing to speak with the elders of Janneh. A merchant leans over to you and murmurs, "This mosque? It's more than a building. It's a beacon, a message to the world that Mali is not just gold and camels, but faith and knowledge too." As the sun sinks lower, casting long shadows across the half-finished walls, you sit and listen to the gentle rustle of palm leaves in the breeze, the quiet chatter of workers packing up for the night, and the fading notes of a griot's song. And you realize you're not just watching a mosque being built, you're witnessing the weaving of Mali's identity into the very soil, a story told in mud and prayer, in sweat and whispered dreams. As night settles in, you feel the cool air on your skin, the roughness of the ground beneath you, and you close your eyes, knowing that tomorrow the work will continue just as it has for generations. The scent of incense mingles with the faint aroma of roasted millet and honeyed tea as you find yourself seated quietly at the edge of a royal gathering. Musa sits at the center of it all, his robes shimmering with gold thread under the flickering lamplight. The air is thick with expectation, and the room hums with the soft murmurs of diplomats and traders, each waiting for their moment to speak. You watch as emissaries from distant kingdoms file in their gifts, wrapped in embroidered cloth, their eyes wide as they take in the splendor of Musa's court. A man from the Hausa lands offers intricately carved wooden statues. A merchant from the Canary Islands brings rare shells and spices. An emissary from Morocco bows low, presenting a pouch heavy with silver coins. Musa accepts each offering with a measured nod, but you notice how, with a flick of his hand, he signals his attendants to distribute his gifts, in return gold dust bolts of fine cloth and small, precise weights of salt. It's as if he's a river, wealth flowing outward from him, reshaping the world in his wake. The griots begin a soft, rhythmic chant, their voices weaving stories of past kings: Sundiata, the Lion King of Mali; Abu Bakr, the ruler who vanished into the sea; and now Musa. You catch the subtle shift in their song, a note of awe that wasn't there before. Historians still debate whether Musa's golden diplomacy strengthened Mali's empire or sowed seeds of trouble by sparking envy among rival kingdoms. Was this generosity a masterstroke of political strategy or an unguarded invitation for future greed? As you sit in the gathering's warmth, the flickering lamps casting dancing shadows across the walls, you sense both possibilities in the air. A merchant nearby leans toward you, whispering behind a hand, "Did you hear Musa's wealth is so vast he could buy Cairo 3 times over?" His voice is half disbelief, half reverence. Another man chuckles softly, shaking his head. And yet they say he still prays 5 times a day, just like the humblest farmer. It's that contrast, the image of a king who gives with both hands, who commands the loyalty of thousands, yet kneels in quiet devotion that lingers in your mind. Later, you find yourself seated on a woven mat near the edge of the gathering. A breeze stirs the heavy curtains and the murmur of conversation fades into the rhythmic rustling of the wind outside. You can't help but feel it. This is not just a king ruling by the sword or by wealth alone. Musa's power flows from his ability to unite people, to make them feel that they are part of something greater, a story bigger than themselves. He stands to leave and the crowd rises as one bowing deeply. Musa's gaze sweeps over the room, measured, calm, yet faintly amused, as if he knows the weight of what he's building and the stories that will be told of him long after the dust of this night has settled. And you follow the slow procession out into the night air, the sky above scattered with stars. Somewhere, a griot's voice lingers on the breeze, singing softly of a king who could make gold flow like a river, but still knew how to listen to the quiet call of faith. The scent of burning sandalwood lingers, and you feel the warmth of the fire fading into the dark as you drift off to sleep, the stories of Musa's golden diplomacy echoing softly in your mind. The sun climbs high, beating down on the packed earth of the market square, where voices rise in a symphony of haggling laughter and the sharp clang of a blacksmith's hammer. You wipe sweat from your brow and take in the bustling scene, merchants fanning themselves with woven palms, children chasing goats through the dust griots, strumming soft tunes in the shade. But amidst the noise you hear a quieter conversation, traders leaning close, whispering behind their hands. Gold is everywhere, one mutters. It flows too freely. The prices are rising, but what happens when they fall? Another shakes his head, voice low. I heard the merchants in Cairo still feel the sting. Too much gold in too short a time, it floods the market. You glance around and see it for yourself. Coins changing hands more quickly, prices creeping higher for a measure of grain or a bolt of cloth. A sense of unease barely perceptible, but it hums beneath the surface like a warning drumbeat. You find Musa seated in a shaded courtyard, his hands resting lightly on his knees. His gaze is steady, yet a furrow creases his brow as an advisor murmurs in his ear. The problem is simple yet monumental. When gold flows like water, its value thins. What once dazzled the world now threatens to unbalance it. Historians still debate whether Musa foresaw the consequences of his golden generosity, whether he understood that flooding markets with so much wealth could create instability. Some argue he was a master strategist, using his riches to forge alliances and awe rivals. Others say he gave without thought for the future, blinded by the sheer abundance of his kingdom's resources. You watch as Musa rises, gathering his robes around him, and walks the perimeter of the courtyard. His steps are slow, deliberate. You sense the weight of the choices pressing on him, how to maintain Mali's glory without tipping the scales too far. A griot's voice rises nearby, singing softly. The river that floods may feed the fields, but it may also drown the grain. You feel the truth of it settle in your bones. Musa's wealth, so dazzling, so immense, is a double-edged sword. For every city enriched by his gifts, there is a merchant somewhere watching prices soar and stability wobble. Later, you sit beneath a tree, the shade a small blessing against the relentless sun. You overhear traders muttering about inflation, about markets swollen with gold, but thin in real value. One man gestures at a bag of coins in frustration, saying, "This won't buy what it did a year ago." You glance at Musa seated once more, his expression calm, but his fingers tapping thoughtfully against the golden hilt of his staff. You wonder, does he hear these whispers? Does he feel the undercurrent of discontent? Or is he focused on the bigger picture, the legacy he's building with each act of generosity? The air smells faintly of roasted meat and dust as the day fades, and you feel the quiet tension woven into the fabric of this golden empire. For now, the markets buzz, the traders sell, and the griots sing. But the golden rain, so dazzling at first, may not nourish forever, and as the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the city, you find yourself wondering, can any empire built on gold alone truly endure? The air shifts as night settles in cooler now, but with an edge of uncertainty. You sit beneath a baobab tree, listening as the griots sing softly of kings long gone, of glory that rose and fell like the tide. Their voices drift into the darkness, and you hear it, a subtle change in the melody, a note of caution threading through the tale. Musa's empire is still strong, still golden in the eyes of the world, but something feels different. His sons and grandsons gather in the royal courts, each casting glances at the golden staff of power, each perhaps wondering, when will it be my turn? You stroll through the palace at dusk, the scent of roasted meat and honeyed cakes hanging in the air. The courtyards are alive with soft conversations, but the edges of those voices are sharp, subtle debates, hushed arguments, laughter that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Power, after all, is a tempting thing, and even gold cannot smooth every ambition. Historians still debate whether Musa's wealth was a blessing or a burden for those who followed him. Did his sons inherit a flourishing kingdom or a poisoned chalice too heavy to bear? Some argue that the sheer scale of Musa's generosity created expectations no ruler could maintain. Others suggest that the empire's cracks were already forming, hidden beneath the golden glow. You pause by a window, watching two of Musa's sons, both tall and well-dressed, leaning close in conversation. Their words are too low to catch, but the tension is clear in the tight lines of their jaws, the way their hands clench and unclench. A servant passes quietly, carrying a golden tray stacked with fruits, and you wonder how long can this opulence continue before it starts to rot. Out in the markets, traders speak in lowered voices about rising prices, unstable trade, and border raids by restless neighbors. You hear the worry in their tones, the way their eyes dart toward the palace gates. Musa's wealth may have dazzled the world, but it also cast long shadows. Shadows his heirs will have to navigate. And yet, in the coolness of the night, the griots still sing his praises. They tell of a king who made gold rain, who built mosques that touched the sky, who sent scholars and architects across the sands to learn and build. You hear it in their voices, a longing perhaps for the golden days, for a time when the empire's borders stretched wide and the rivers of trade flowed fast and fat with riches. But you also sense a quiet question woven into their words, a question they dare not speak aloud. What happens when the gold runs thin? Musa himself seems serene, seated beneath a canopy of woven cloth, his face half lit by flickering lamps. He listens to the songs, nods thoughtfully, but says little. You wonder if he too hears the undercurrent in the griot's tales, the tension between glory and burden, between legacy and expectation. The night deepens and you feel the weight of time pressing in. The gold is still here, the empire still vast, the songs still sweet. But you know as surely as the moon will wax and wane that no kingdom stays golden forever. And as the last notes of the griot's melody fade into the dark, you sit quietly, letting the warm air and the scent of the earth settle over you. The future, like the stars above, is wide and uncertain. But for now, the night is soft, and the stories of Musa shimmer like gold dust in the wind. You rise early, the soft glow of dawn painting the horizon in streaks of pale orange and dusty rose. The air smells of dew-soaked earth and smoldering cooking fires, and the sounds of the waking city blend into a low familiar hum, merchants opening their stalls, children's laughter echoing in the alleys, and the distant shuffle of camels being loaded for the day's trade. Musa's empire stretches far and wide, now a tapestry, woven from the Sahel's endless plains to the salt-slicked sands of Tagaza. You run your fingers along a map spread out in the royal council chamber, the parchment crinkling beneath your touch, its faded lines marking the Niger's serpentine flow, the jagged edges of the Sahara, and the salt mines that glimmer like hidden gems in the desert's vastness. A griot hums softly nearby, weaving a melody about the empire's reach. From gold to salt, from scholar to king, the rivers of trade carry Mali's dreams. And yet, as you stand in the dim morning light, you sense the weight of uncertainty creeping in. The borders are vast, yes, but they are also thin. You overhear warriors arguing over distant outposts. The Songhai are testing the river again, one mutters. Another grumbles. The salt caravans are running late, bandits, they say. Historians still debate how much of Mali's reach was truly Musa's doing. Was it his vision alone that stretched the empire's edges? Or was it the momentum of centuries, the tireless work of traders, farmers, and craftsmen who built the routes long before he was born? Some argue that Musa was the culmination of generations of effort, while others credit him with pushing the borders outward with deliberate golden ambition. You wander through the bustling market, the scent of spices and roasting meats thick in the air. Traders from distant lands shout their wares, fabrics in rich indigo and crimson fluttering like banners. A merchant from the north boasts loudly, "Mali's gold built these roads," while a woman selling kola nuts retorts with a wry grin. Ah, but it's the salt that feeds us. Musa's name drifts in the wind, spoken with reverence and awe. But you hear too the faintest notes of doubt, whispers about the strain of holding such a vast kingdom together of borderlands, fraying at the edges of rival kings, eyeing Mali's riches with envy. You pass a caravan leader counting camels, his face drawn tight with worry. Too many miles to guard, too many mouths to feed, he mutters, his voice low and weary. You feel it too, the weight of expansion, the burden of an empire whose borders stretch far, but whose strength must stretch even farther to hold it all. And yet, when you see Musa seated in the shade of a baobab, listening to scholars debate astronomy and faith, his expression remains calm, thoughtful. Perhaps he knows the risks. Perhaps he believes the reward outweighs them. Or perhaps he understands that no empire, no matter how rich in gold, can escape the tides of time forever. The griots continue to sing their melodies, rising and falling like the Niger's gentle flow. They tell of an empire vast and golden, of a king whose name echoes across the sands, and of traders who carry his legacy on their backs. As night settles in, the stars blinking gently into the dark sky, you sit quietly beside the fire, the voices fading into the warm hush of the evening. You think of the maps, the borders, the fragile lines drawn in the dust, and you wonder how long they will hold, how long the gold can keep the threads of this empire woven tight. But for now, the flames flicker softly and the scent of spiced tea fills the air, and you close your eyes to the sound of a griot's song drifting into the night. The scent of dust and parchment fills the air as you step softly into a dimly lit room, its walls lined with shelves, bowing under the weight of books. The air is warm and still, the quiet punctuated by the scratch of a reed pen on paper. You pause, breathing in the faint aroma of ink, and your fingers hover over the worn spines of manuscripts, some wrapped in faded cloth, others left bare, the leather cracked and smooth from years of handling. This is the heart of Musa's vision, the libraries of Timbuktu. You watch as scholars move quietly among the shelves, heads bent, lips moving silently as they read. A young boy barely taller than the table carries a stack of manuscripts, his eyes wide with wonder as he peers at the neat rows of Arabic script. Musa's dream wasn't just of gold and grandeur, it was of knowledge. He knew that wealth could fade, that empires could crumble, but the written word that could endure. You trail your fingers over a page, its edges soft and frayed. The script flows like a river, its curves elegant, its meaning locked behind the ancient language. Astronomy, law, medicine, poetry. The walls of this library hold not just Mali's knowledge but the wisdom of the Islamic world. Manuscripts have arrived from Cairo, Fez, Mecca, and beyond each a thread in the grand tapestry Musa is weaving. Historians still puzzle over how much of the manuscript boom in Timbuktu was directly driven by Musa's patronage and how much was the result of centuries of local scholarship. Was it the king's vision that sparked the city's intellectual bloom, or was he simply the wind that fanned a fire already smoldering? Either way, you can feel it here, the pulse of learning, the quiet hum of minds at work. You pause to listen as a scholar debates a passage of legal theory with a student, their voices low and steady. A griot sits in the corner plucking a stringed instrument, weaving Musa's story into the rhythm of the day. The music mingles with the faint scent of ink and the whisper of pages turning. A merchant leans toward you, his voice hushed, almost reverent. They say there are more books in Timbuktu than in all of Europe. His eyes widen as if even he can't quite believe it. Outside, the sun casts long shadows across the streets of the city. The calls of traders drift in through the open windows, mingling with the soft laughter of children playing in the dust. You hear the shuffle of sandals on the packed earth as a caravan arrives. More goods, more books, more knowledge flowing into this unlikely oasis. And somewhere, you know Musa is watching it all unfold. You picture him seated under the shade of a baobab, listening as a scribe reads aloud from a new manuscript, perhaps a work of philosophy or a treatise on astronomy. His face is calm, thoughtful, perhaps faintly smiling at the idea that long after his gold is spent, these words will remain. The griot's voice rises gently, a soft melody carried on the warm breeze. Gold fades, walls crumble, but words endure. You sit quietly, letting the sounds of the city wash over you, the laughter, the footsteps, the turning pages, and you feel it, a kind of peace settling in. This is not the glittering spectacle of Cairo, not the bustling markets of Mali's trade routes. This is slower, quieter, but no less powerful. This is the legacy of a king who understood that true wealth isn't always measured in coins, but in the knowledge you leave behind. And as the sun dips lower, casting the library in a warm golden glow, you close your eyes for a moment, letting the story linger like the scent of ink in the air. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the salt flats of Tahaza. You step gingerly over the uneven ground, the air dry and brittle, stinging your nose with the sharp metallic scent of salt. The landscape shimmers, almost blinding the slabs of salt, stacked in neat geometric piles like pale bricks waiting for a mason's hand. This is the other half of Mali's empire, the less glamorous, less glittering side that keeps the golden machine turning. Salt, they say, is worth its weight in gold. And here, as you run your fingers along the rough, grainy edges of a slab, you believe it. Musa knew it too. You picture him standing here once surveying the scene, watching as workers' faces lined with sweat and dust heaved heavy blocks onto the backs of camels. The caravans stretch endlessly, winding like beads on a string across the Sahara laden, not with gold, but with this precious pale mineral that keeps people alive. Historians still debate how much control Musa personally exerted over the salt trade. Was he the architect of its expansion, or did he simply inherit a system perfected by those before him? Did his wealth come from wise management of resources, or from the sheer luck of sitting atop some of the richest deposits in the known world? You watch as traders haggle under the relentless sunbeams of sweat dripping into the sand. A man holds up a chunk of salt, his fingers white with dust, and shouts a price. Another nods, handing over a pouch of gold dust weighed carefully on a small balance. The exchange feels ancient, primal, like something that has happened here for 1,000 years, and maybe it has. Musa's genius, you realize, wasn't just in gathering wealth, but in understanding what wealth meant in different places. Gold was power, prestige, a symbol to the world. But salt was survival. Salt kept food from spoiling, bodies from withering, and economies humming across vast dry landscapes. You overhear a griot's soft song as you wander the edges of the flats. Gold feeds the heart's desire, but salt feeds the body's need. The wind picks up, carrying fine grains of salt that sting your skin. You squint against the glare and watch as a caravan forms, camels kneeling patiently as workers load their burdens. The creak of leather straps, the low grumble of animals, the murmured prayers of the traders. It all weaves into a kind of rhythm, an ancient choreography that Musa's empire depends upon. A merchant beside you leans close, whispering, "They say Musa could buy an entire kingdom with gold, but without salt, even a king would starve." His voice is soft, almost reverent, as if acknowledging a quiet truth that glitters less but matters more. As the sun dips lower, casting a warm orange glow over the flats, you feel the weight of the empire in your bones. Gold may be the story people tell, the legend that gleams across maps and echoes in the halls of distant palaces, but it is salt that keeps the world alive. And Musa, you sense, understood that better than most. You sit in the fading light, the air cooling as night approaches, and listen as the caravans begin to move their bells, jangling softly in the vast open quiet. The griot's song lingers in your mind, weaving into the hush of the desert. He who knows the worth of salt is richer than gold. And as the stars begin to blink into the darkening sky, you feel the steady pulse of the empire humming in the footsteps of traders and the soft grind of salt against camel skin. The scent of sandalwood drifts through the air as you find yourself once again in a quiet courtyard, the soft murmurs of prayer blending with the distant shuffle of sandals and the gentle creak of wooden doors. Musa sits nearby on a simple mat, the lines of his face calm, his hands resting lightly on his knees. His lips move in a whisper, and you recognize the words La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the central tenet of his faith. You kneel nearby, feeling the coolness of the earth beneath your palms, and let the sounds of the call to prayer wash over you. The rhythmic pattern of voices rising and falling in unison is both grounding and humbling, a reminder that no matter how much gold a man holds, he bows before something far greater. Musa's faith, you realize, is woven through everything he does. His pilgrimage to Mecca wasn't just a royal tour or a display of wealth, it was an act of devotion, a journey that bound him to the broader Islamic world, connecting Mali to the spiritual heart of the Muslim community. Historians still debate whether Musa's faith was purely personal or if it served a political purpose. Was it a sincere devotion that guided his actions or a clever way to position Mali as a respected player in the global Islamic network? Perhaps it was both a blend of belief and strategy, as complex and layered as the sands that stretch across his empire. You walk through the mosque, the scent of worn leather sandals and cool clay filling the air. The walls are simple, adorned with geometric patterns, and the faint echo of whispered prayers lingers like a soft hum. Musa's presence is everywhere here, not in grand displays but in quiet acts of support, the funding of scholars, the building of places of worship, the encouragement of learning alongside faith. A griot nearby sings in a low, steady voice. The king with gold in his hands and prayer in his heart binds earth to heaven. You pause by a group of students sitting cross-legged, their slates propped in their laps, as they repeat verses from the Quran in soft melodic tones. A teacher's voice guides them, gently correcting intonation, ensuring the sacred words are spoken with care. Musa, you notice, watches them for a moment from a distance, a faint smile touching his lips. There's a tenderness in his gaze, a quiet satisfaction perhaps, in knowing that long after his own voice is gone, these voices will carry on weaving faith and knowledge into the fabric of Mali's future. Later, as the stars begin to pierce the indigo sky, you find yourself seated near a small fire, the scent of tea leaves curling into the air. Traders murmur softly nearby, discussing the latest caravan arrivals, while an elderly scholar recites lines of poetry, under his breath a quiet counterpoint to the crackle of the flames. You close your eyes, letting the warmth seep into your skin, and you feel it, this sense of balance of faith and wealth intertwined, of a king who could distribute gold with one hand and raise the other in prayer. And you wonder, in a world so often driven by the hunger for more, perhaps Musa's greatest wealth wasn't his gold, but his understanding that some things, faith, knowledge, the quiet bonds between people are beyond price. The fire crackles softly, the night air cool against your skin, and you drift into sleep as the griot's song lingers like a lullaby, telling of a king who prayed as much as he ruled and whose heart perhaps was richer than even the sands of gold he ruled over. The air hums with the steady rhythm of voices, low, melodic, and rich with memory. You find yourself seated on a woven mat beneath the shade of a wide acacia tree, the griot's song curling through the leaves like smoke. Their hands pluck the strings of ancient instruments, their fingers tapping soft rhythms against stretched hides. The music is slow, almost hypnotic, and you feel your breath slow to match its cadence. They sing of Musa now, his name a golden thread woven into the tapestry of time. The tale flows like a river meandering from one story to the next. The boy who became king, the king who crossed the desert, the man who made gold rain. You listen, eyes half-lidded, as their words paint vivid pictures across the canvas of your mind. But here's the thing, every griot tells the story a little differently. One claims that Musa's caravan stretched farther than the eye could see, with camels so burdened by gold they groaned under the weight. Another insists that Musa's gold caused Cairo's markets to collapse for years, a ripple of chaos that reached all the way to Constantinople. A third griot, older and with a mischievous glint in his eye, leans in and whispers that Musa once gave so much gold to a single beggar that the man fainted on the spot. Historians still argue over the truth. Were the stories of Musa's wealth exaggerated by wide-eyed travelers spun into legend by eager traders who wanted to impress their friends back home? Or was it all real, a dazzling moment in time when an African king truly did hold the world's economy in the palm of his hand? You watch the griots weave these tales together, their voices rising and falling like the dunes of the Sahara. Their eyes glint with the joy of the story, but you also sense the weight of responsibility in their tones. After all, they are the keepers of memory, the guardians of a past that lives not in books alone, but in song, in voice, in breath. A child nearby tugs at your sleeve, his eyes wide. Did Mansa Musa really ride a camel made of gold? He asks, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. You smile softly and shake your head. No, little one, you whisper. The camel was flesh and bone, but the story, that shines brighter than gold. The griot hears this and laughs, a deep belly-shaking sound that echoes through the gathering. Truth and tale, my friend, he calls. Who can say where one ends and the other begins? You glance at Musa seated quietly nearby, listening to the songs. His eyes are half closed, a faint smile on his lips. Perhaps he knows how the stories will grow, how the legends will stretch and shimmer like heat rising from the desert sands. And perhaps he's content to let them. For in the end, isn't that part of the power to be remembered not just as a man, but as a story? A song passed from lips to ears, drifting through time like a soft golden breeze. The griot's melody lingers as the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the gathering. The scent of roasted millet and honey fills the air, mingling with the music, the stories, the laughter. You close your eyes, the rhythm of the song sinking into your bones, and you feel it, the quiet, steady heartbeat of history pulsing in the words of the griots, in the memory of a king who knew that gold fades but stories shine forever. You stretch your legs and wander toward the edge of the gathering where the flickering light of a small oil lamp glows against the backdrop of a well-worn map. The parchment feels warm under your fingertips, its edges curled and cracked, the colors faded yet still vivid enough to guide the imagination. Your eyes trace the dark lines of the Sahara, the curling sweep of the Niger, and the bold illustrations scattered across the page. There, in the heart of the map, is Mali, and there, drawn larger than life, is Mansa Musa himself, seated on a golden throne holding a gleaming nugget of gold in one hand and a scepter in the other. His crown is impossibly tall, his robes impossibly rich, and the expression on his face, well, that depends on who you ask. You lean closer, listening as a griot hums softly under his breath. The king who held the sun in his hands. Historians still debate how Musa's image came to be etched into the memory of medieval Europe. Was it the traders who carried stories of his golden pilgrimage, their tales growing taller with every mile? Or was it the scribes of Cairo and Mecca, wide-eyed at the scale of his generosity, who spread his legend far beyond the sands of Africa? Some argue it was the cartographers' men like Abraham Cresques who immortalized Musa on the Catalan Atlas, making him the face of West Africa in the minds of distant lands. You run your fingers over the faint lines of that map, feeling the ridges where ink met parchment centuries ago. The gold glimmers faintly in the lamplight, and you imagine the shock of a European merchant in Venice or Genoa, hearing for the first time of a king from a far-off land who could flood entire economies with gold. You hear a soft chuckle beside you. An old trader, his beard streaked with white, leans in and says, "They drew him big so they wouldn't forget." He grins, his eyes sparkling. A king of gold must have a kingdom big enough for the world to see. The griot strums a quiet note, his voice drifting into the air like smoke. On the map he sits in gold, but no map can hold a king's true weight. You think about that, about the man and the myth, about how stories travel faster than caravans, how a figure drawn in ink can outlast flesh and bone. Musa's image on that map isn't just a picture, it's a symbol, a whisper of a world that once shimmered with gold, and dreams, a reminder that Africa's empires were not forgotten backwaters, but places of power, vision, and wealth. You glance at Musa seated by the fire, his hands folded in quiet thought. Does he know how far his name will travel? How many will see his likeness on a map and wonder who he was, what he did, how he shaped the world? The night deepens, the stars dusting the sky in a quiet shimmer. You sit with the map in your lap, its lines fading in the firelight, and you feel a strange kind of awe, how a single man born into a kingdom of red dust and gold could become a figure who shapes how the world sees an entire continent. And as the wind sighs through the trees, you fold the map gently, the image of Musa still glowing faintly in your mind, a golden king who sits on the page watching, waiting, reminding the world that Africa's story is far richer than most ever knew. The night air is thick with the scent of camel sweat leather and distant fires as you find yourself wandering through a bustling trade outpost at the edge of the Sahara. The caravan bells jingle softly in the darkness, the low murmurs of merchants mingling with the crackle of small cooking fires. The stars above seem impossibly bright, scattered across the sky like spilled salt, and the faint hum of conversation weaves into the warm night air. You pause near a group of traders huddled over a map drawn in the sand, their fingers tracing the winding paths that lead north, east, and west. Their voices are low, almost reverent as they speak of one thing: gold. Musa's gold. It flowed like a river, they say. One whispers, his eyes wide with awe. I heard he gave so much to Cairo, they had to weigh it in baskets. A man from Algiers told me the price of gold hasn't been the same since. Another chimes in, shaking his head in disbelief. You lean in, listening, feeling the ripple effect of Musa's journey, spreading outward across the Sahara like a wave. His caravan may have passed through years ago, but the stories linger, carried in the breath of traders, repeated in the songs of griots, etched into the prices of goods. Historians still debate the true extent of Musa's economic impact. Did he single-handedly cause gold inflation across North Africa and the Mediterranean, or was it a tale spun larger than life by merchants eager for a good story? Some argue that the gold rush that followed in his wake ignited new rivalries and trade networks, while others suggest it destabilized local economies, sowing seeds of tension that would outlast Musa's reign. You walk through the market, the soft glow of oil lamps lighting the faces of traders, weighing small pouches of gold dust, their scales delicate, their hands careful. The glint of gold is everywhere, in the tilt of a merchant's grin, in the sheen of a bracelet passed from hand to hand, in the wary glances exchanged over a whispered bargain. Musa's name is still spoken in these places, sometimes with reverence, sometimes with envy, sometimes with the faintest hint of resentment. You hear it in the way a merchant mutters under his breath, "If only I had been in Cairo when he passed through. One handful of his gold would have fed my family for a year." And yet you also hear admiration. A young boy, wide-eyed and barefoot, asks a griot, "Is it true? Did the king give away gold like dates from a basket?" The griot's eyes sparkle in the firelight, and he smiles slowly, his voice smooth as honey. "Ah, little one. Musa's gold flowed like the river, yes, but remember, even the river runs dry." You pause, letting that thought settle in your mind. Musa's generosity, so dazzling, so legendary, was a moment brilliant, yes, but fleeting. The gold that once rained down has long been spent, but the stories remain echoing across the sands, whispering through the marketplace, etched into the very fabric of trade routes that stretch beyond the horizon. As the fire crackles low, you close your eyes and hear the faint clang of a trader's scale, balancing gold dust against salt. The air hums with quiet energy, the weight of history pressing in, and you realize that Musa's true legacy wasn't just the gold he gave away. It was the way his generosity reshaped the flow of trade, the dreams of merchants, and the songs of griots for generations to come. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of spices and firewood, and you breathe it in, feeling the weight of a golden king's story settle gently on your shoulders. The market hums with a lazy rhythm, the kind that settles over a place in the late afternoon heat. You wander slowly through the maze of stalls, the scent of roasted peanuts and spiced tea curling through the air, the low drone of traders, haggling blending into the soft clink of metal on scales. This is a world Musa helped build, a world where gold flows, yes, but where trade pulses through the veins of the empire, keeping it alive. You pause by a group of merchants seated cross-legged on woven mats, their fingers dusty from counting cowrie shells and weighing salt blocks. Their conversation drifts toward you like smoke. Musa was a king, yes. But the merchants, they are the ones who carried his gold across the sands. You smile faintly, recognizing the quiet pride in their voices. They're not wrong. Mali's power wasn't built on gold alone. It was built on the backs of traders who braved the Sahara, who bartered for spices in the markets of Marrakesh, who carried stories from Cairo to Gao. Musa's gold may have been the spark, but it was the merchants who fanned the flame, who wove his legend into the fabric of daily life. Historians still debate where the heart of Mali's wealth truly lay. Was it in the mines deep beneath the earth, in the shimmering blocks of salt carried on camelback, or in the clever hands of traders who transformed goods into stories, stories into value, and value into lasting connections that stretched across continents? A griot seated nearby begins to strum his instrument, his voice smooth and low. The king gives the gold, but the merchant carries it far. The road winds wide, but the story is carried on the wind. You glance at Musa seated a short distance away in the shade of a cloth canopy, his eyes half closed as if lost in thought. His hands rest lightly on his knees, his breath slow and steady. Perhaps he knows that his legacy is only as strong as the people who carry it forward. You watch a young merchant boy haggling over a bundle of dried dates. his face flushed with determination. And you wonder how many like him dream of becoming the next great trader, of following the golden threads Musa spun into the world. The air is thick with quiet ambition, the kind that hums beneath the surface of a place, and understanding that the flow of goods is also the flow of stories, of culture, of ideas. You hear it in the clink of gold dust being weighed, in the soft crackle of parchment as contracts are signed, in the murmured prayers that rise like incense at day's end. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows across the market, you find yourself seated once again under a baobab tree. The breeze rustles the leaves overhead, and the soft laughter of traders fills the space around you. You close your eyes, listening to the voices drift on the air, Musa's name woven into their words like a golden thread. He gave us the gold, but we carried it on our backs. His caravan crossed the desert, but our trade keeps it alive. He was the king, yes, but we are the merchants. And you realize that Musa's story is not just one man's tale, but the story of an empire, a web of people, places, and dreams spun wide across the desert sands. The night settles gently, the stars blinking awake in the darkening sky, and you feel it, the quiet, steady heartbeat of commerce, of human connection, of a legacy built not just on gold, but on the hands that carried it across the world. The air cools as the sun dips low, casting long, dappled shadows across the banks of the Niger River. You wander along its edge, listening to the soft murmur of water against stone, the gentle slosh of fishermen pulling in their nets, the creak of wooden boats drifting lazily downstream. The river flows steady and patient, its surface gleaming like liquid gold in the fading light. You watch as traders unload their wares, bundles of cloth from the east, slabs of salt from the desert, gourds of oil and honey. The scent of dried fish and warm millet fills the air, mingling with the sharp tang of river mud and the faint sweetness of mango trees nearby. This is the lifeblood of Mali, you realize. Not the gold alone, not the grand palaces or libraries, but the river. The slow, steady pulse of trade, of life, of movement. Musa knew this too. You picture him standing here, his robes billowing in the warm breeze, his gaze tracing the river's gentle curves. Perhaps he saw it not just as a body of water, but as a metaphor, a current that connects villages, cities, ideas. Historians still argue whether the empire's strength lay in its trade routes, its gold mines, or its rulers' ambitions. But as you stand here watching a trader's worn hands tie a boat's mooring, it's hard to ignore the simple truth: without the river there would be no empire. The griot's song drifts over the water like a breeze. The river whispers stories to the sands carry them to the stars. You close your eyes and listen. The creak of a boat's hull, the soft splash of an oar, the quiet hum of voices bartering by the riverbank. A boy nearby skips stones across the water's surface, the ripples spreading wider and wider, and you smile at the simple beauty of it. That's Musa's legacy too, isn't it? The ripple effect. His golden wealth may have shone bright, but it was the connections built across rivers and deserts, in markets and mosques, that truly carried his name across the world. A merchant sits beside you, his beard flecked with gray, his hands calloused from years of trade. He leans back, watching the river flow, and says softly, "Gold is heavy. A man can only carry so much. But a river carries everything." You nod, feeling the truth settle into your bones like the soft hum of a boat drifting past. The sky darkens, the stars shimmering in the reflection of the water, and you feel a quiet peace settle in. The river flows as it always has, as it always will, carrying salt gold stories and the soft echo of a king's name. You stretch out on the warm ground, the breeze soft against your skin, the water's song a gentle lullaby in the dark. The empire's borders may change its wealth, may rise and fall, but the river, the river flows on. And as you drift into sleep, you hear it whisper, Mali, Musa, gold, faith, time. The air feels different now, heavier, quieter. You walk slowly through the outskirts of a village, the dust rising gently with each step, the sun casting long shadows that seem to stretch endlessly across the earth. The laughter you heard so often, the music, the hum of the markets, it's all softer now, more subdued, like a song played in a minor key. You stop at a small well watching as a woman hauls up a heavy bucket, her face lined with years of work and weather. She nods to you with a faint smile, but her eyes drift back to the dusty horizon where the caravans once flowed like rivers of gold. The flow has slowed now, and you feel it in the air, the edges of the empire, fraying, the weight of time pressing down. Musa's empire is still vast, still rich in memory, but you hear the whispers in the market stalls, the murmurs in the fields. Traders grumble about bandits, border skirmishes, and taxes. A farmer nearby shakes his head as he surveys a thin crop, muttering under his breath, "Too many mouths, not enough hands." You pass a small group of men arguing over a map drawn hastily in the dirt. Their voices are sharp, worried. The Songhai are pushing south. The salt caravans are delayed again, 3 months, they say. Musa's sons, they do not rule with his strength. Historians still debate how much of Mali's decline was inevitable. Did the gold run out? Did rival kingdoms grow too strong? Or did the very weight of the empire stretched so wide and held together by the vision of one man begin to buckle when that man's hands no longer held the reins? You find Musa's legacy in the stones of the mosques, the scent of old parchment in the libraries, the faded stories of the griots, but you also find it in the weariness of the traders, in the worried glances shared between elders, in the subtle cracks forming in the roads that once hummed with the tread of 1,000 camels. A griot sings quietly nearby, his voice, softer than you remember, as if the wind itself is reluctant to carry the tune. Gold shines bright, but empires dim. A king's hand fades, and the borders grow thin. You glance up at the sky, the stars blinking awake one by one, and wonder what Musa would think if he could see his empire now, its vastness still impressive, its memory still golden, but its edges trembling like the last echoes of a great song. And yet, the people endure. A merchant still counts his coins, a farmer still tends his field, a child still listens to the griot's tale with wide eyes. The empire may shift, the gold may wane, but the pulse of life continues steady and stubborn. You walk on your footsteps soft in the dust and feel the weight of time settle around you. The story isn't over, it never really is. It just changes shape like the sands shifting under the desert winds, like the river finding a new path when the old one fades. The griot's voice drifts after you as you walk. Mali rises, Mali fades. But the story, the story remains. The desert air feels cooler now, the nights longer, the stars sharper against the inky sky. You walk through the quiet camp, the soft murmur of voices barely audible, the fires burning low, their embers glowing faintly like the last echoes of a once roaring flame. The mood is reflective, almost somber, as if the very air knows that a chapter is coming to a close. Musa is older now. You see it in the lines etched deep around his eyes, in the slower pace of his step, in the way he pauses a little longer when he listens to the griot's songs. His robes, though still rich, seem a little heavier on his shoulders, the gold glinting more softly in the fading light. You follow him on a quiet walk through the palace gardens, where the scent of flowering acacia drifts in the breeze and the soft rustle of palm fronds fills the air. His hands are folded behind his back, his gaze distant, as if he's looking not at the garden before him, but at the paths he's traveled, the gold he's given, the cities he's built. Historians still debate the final years of Musa's life. Did he pass quietly in his palace at Niani, surrounded by his family and advisors, or did he die on the road somewhere between the sands and the rivers, his body swallowed by the vastness of his empire? Was he buried beneath a grand tomb, or do his bones rest beneath an unmarked stone lost to the desert winds? No one knows for sure, and perhaps that's fitting. For a man who became a legend, who blurred the lines between history and myth, maybe it's right that his final resting place remains a mystery. You pass a group of elders sitting in the fading light, their voices low as they debate the king's legacy. His gold-built mosques and markets, one says. But gold can't hold an empire together, another replies. A third nods thoughtfully. No. But the story of Musa that will hold longer than stone. The griots agree, their song soft and slow tonight, as if they too are pondering the weight of the tale they carry. They sing of Musa's pilgrimage, his reign of gold, his grand vision of learning and faith. They sing of the scholars who came to Mali, of the mosques that rose from the sands of the river that flows steadily still. But woven into the melody is a subtle note of longing, a quiet question that lingers. What happens when the gold is spent? When the king is gone? You look at Musa seated quietly beneath a tree, the shadows playing across his face. His eyes are closed, his breathing slow, and you wonder if he's dreaming of the golden caravans of the cities he visited, of the libraries he built. Or maybe he's dreaming of peace, of the gentle hush that comes when a life lived in grandeur finally softens into rest. The stars blink softly above, and you feel the desert air shift cool and quiet. And as the night deepens, you hear the griots sing once more, their voices like a lullaby. A king of gold, a man of faith, a story that shines in the dark. You sit quietly, letting the music drift over you, and you know whether Musa's bones lie beneath palace stone or desert sand. His legacy is here in the stories told, in the songs sung, in the quiet awe that lingers long after the gold is gone. The night air is soft, almost velvety, as it brushes across your skin. You sit quietly beneath a star-strewn sky, the embers of a dying fire casting faint flickering shadows across the sand. The griot's song has faded into a gentle hum, and the world seems to hold its breath, as if even the earth is waiting for the final chords of this long golden tale. Musa's story has been sung, spoken, whispered in markets, palaces, and around campfires like this one. His gold has been spent, traded, gifted. His mosques built from the clay of the earth and the sweat of 1,000 hands. His name has been etched onto maps in distant lands, his image drawn larger than life. And now, as the fire crackles softly, you feel the weight of all that has been golden riches. Yes, but also the quiet ache of time. You hear the griots, their voices blending with the sigh of the desert wind, singing not just of Musa, but of all that came after. Of sons and grandsons, of rivalries and fading borders, of empires that once gleamed and now shimmer faintly in memory like distant stars. The scholars still argue, of course, was it the gold that built Musa's legacy, or the vision of a man who understood the power of knowledge, faith, and trade? Did his generosity spark Mali's golden age, or did it set in motion the very forces that would unravel it? Was he a man of boundless faith or a master of subtle strategy, or both? You don't know all the answers, and perhaps that's the point. You sit quietly, breathing in the warm, dry air, listening as the wind stirs the tall grasses by the river. You can almost hear Musa's voice, a faint whisper, carried on the breeze, not as a king giving orders, but as a man pondering his place in the grand tapestry of time. The caravan bells have long since stopped ringing. The gold has long since been weighed and traded. The fires have cooled, the stories have softened, but still Musa's name glimmers faint, yet steady like a distant star you can't quite touch, but can always see. And you know, as the night deepens and the air grows still, that his story is not just his own. It belongs to the griots, to the traders, to the scholars, to the children who ask wide-eyed questions beneath the trees. It belongs to the river and the desert, the mosques and the markets, the pages of the books tucked away in dusty libraries. It belongs to you now. So, you sit a little longer, letting the silence settle over you like a warm blanket, and you smile because some stories, no matter how many years pass, continue to flow like the slow, steady river. And as you close your eyes, you hear the faintest whisper, golden, gentle, timeless, sleep well, traveler. The story goes on. Let your breathing slow now, matching the gentle rhythm of the desert wind. The night stretches wide and the stars blink softly overhead, scattered like quiet promises in the dark. The fires have faded to soft embers, their warmth lingering faintly in the cool air, and the griot's song has become a memory, a gentle echo that fades with each passing moment. You feel the weight of the day melt away, the golden caravans, the bustling markets, the scent of salt and spices, the hum of scholars debating by lamplight. All of it begins to soften, to drift away like dust carried on a lazy breeze. Your body relaxes, each muscle, unwinding, your hands resting gently by your sides, your breath deep and steady. The stories of Musa, the rise and fall of empires, the laughter of merchants, the wisdom of griots, they all settle in your mind like faint golden threads, weaving quietly into the fabric of your dreams. The river flows softly in the distance, a quiet lullaby that carries you deeper into sleep. The stars shine gently above, their light distant yet familiar, a reminder that time moves slowly here in this place of story and song. Let your mind wander now, free and easy. Let the edges of the world blur the dust of Mali's golden past, drifting quietly into the darkness. You are safe here, surrounded by stories, by voices long past, by the quiet hum of history fading into the night. Rest well, traveler. The story sleeps with you,